I was told for my assignment this week that I should put together a typical 2 minute unhinged rant, I believe was the terminology that Jerry used. And I guess that's what I'm known for around the holidays here.
Wait a second, Joe.
Um,
You can't prepare for a rant. You just have to have a rant. Come on.
so I was on a walk in between calls today before we started recording. I was thinking, like, what's my rant going to be this year? What's my unhinged, quote unquote, unhinged rant going to be about? And the thing that kept coming to mind, I wasn't sure if I wanted to try to talk about this in the show because it's really offbeat, but it's something that I've been thinking a lot about. So this starts with the question of free will versus determinism. Okay, so we're going to get pretty heavy pretty quickly. The problem is that we live in a clockwork universe, right? We live with a mechanistic physical system that if you push a ball down a hill, it keeps rolling kind of thing. And it's going to bump into something and it's going to push that thing. And so that's all something that we know through physics. If everything in the universe that we know is comprised of particles that obey these laws where they're bumping into each other and having this effect, people take that to the extreme and say, philosophers say that the universe is deterministic, whatever they call it, omniscient observer, knowing everything about the entire universe, the position of every particle and all the rules and all that. As of right now, they would be able to tell you explicitly what's going to happen in a completely deterministic way 1 second from now or 1 hour from now or 1 year from now. And so how do you reconcile that with the feeling that we all have, that we have free will? Sam could just stop the recording right now. He has the free will to do that. Let's hope
I'm
he
about
doesn't.
to.
And I could hang up and walk out the door. I have the free will to do that. I certainly feel like I'm able to do that. Why is it that this universe obeys these laws and every single thing in the universe seems to obey these laws, and therefore we should be able to predict what's going to happen next to a certainty, and yet we have quote unquote free will? So I've heard some philosophers, I don't know what you want to think about it, talk about this. One being this guy, Sam Harris. He's got a great podcast. I highly recommend everybody follows his podcast. Just look for Sam Harris. Also, his app called Waking Up is a fantastic meditation app and just a great app for audio content that's really interesting. He talks about this, and he's a really interesting and smart guy, and he tries to reconcile free will versus determinism. And to me, it just has never made sense. It's like the one thing that I can't quite grasp the argument he's making. These two things seem like in direct opposition. Where's the gray area? How do these things intersect? When do we have free will, and when do we just have to follow the rules of physics? And this, again, may be a little bit esoteric. So there's this thing called the observer effect in physics. And you can demonstrate that basically the observer, the person who's doing the experiment, has an effect on the outcome. And this is proven in a really interesting way in the double slit experiment. So I recommend that people go and look into the double slit experiment. Also, Schrodinger's cat is really interesting. So the double slit experiment tries to figure out if light, photons, are a wave or a particle. So you guys may remember from high school or college physics, light can behave as both a particle, a discrete particle, or a wave in different circumstances. So when it's a wave, if you shine one beam of light onto another beam of light, the wave will interfere. The two beams of light acting as waves interfere with each other in a certain way that creates a pattern, like a band of stripes, let's say. Whereas if light is behaving as a particle, it doesn't do that. So the double slit experiment has two slits through a screen, and it shines beams of light through these two slits. And the weird thing about this experiment is that if you're just shining a light through the two slits, it interferes and makes a wave pattern, like an interference pattern. Okay, so try to stay with me here. If you send one photon at a time through the two slits, if the photon is a particle, it can't go through both slits. If it's a wave, it can go through both slits. So if it's a wave, it still makes the interference pattern, even if it's just one single photon. Now, the weird thing about this is if you detect which slit this single particle, this single photon, goes through, it behaves like a particle. Whereas if you don't put a detector to show which of the two slits this single photon, this single particle goes through, it behaves as a wave and it shows the interference pattern at the other end. And you can turn that on or off. You can make it behave like a wave, or you can make it behave like a particle by simply observing which of the two slits it goes through. And the even weirder thing is that if you don't directly observe it, but you simply record whether it went through one slit or the other, it behaves like a particle. So it's choosing, or it's becoming a particle based on whether you're measuring, based on whether you're observing. All right, so I promise this is leading somewhere. So to me, this experiment, this double slit experiment, and this thing called the observer effect is how I've been looking at reconciling free will versus determinism. I think that actually the universe is pretty deterministic. If you knew every single thing that has happened in someone's life leading up to this moment, you knew every particle in making up their body and every particle in their brain and the state of their system, you would know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to stop recording, or they're going to walk out the door, or whatever the case is. And yet we do have some kind of free will. I think the free will that we have is what we choose to observe. So I think that the fundamental choice we have is as an observer, what we're looking at, what we're paying attention to, the kind of information we're absorbing, that kind of thing. Maybe this time of year when we get together with family members and friends who may not believe the same kinds of things you believe, and it may be hard to talk to them because as strongly as you believe A, they are anti-A, or as much as you believe A, they believe B. And so it can be hard to talk to people because I find myself asking, how the F could you possibly believe that? Where are you getting your information? And I think that has a big factor in this. All of the things that they've observed, the news they're watching on TV, or the websites that come up when they open their web browser by default, the kind of habits they have, like which sites they tend to go to, the people that they follow on social media, that's the stuff that they're being exposed to. And as we all know, the algorithms tend to show you more of the content that you engage with online. So if you're tending to engage with a certain perspective, you're going to see more of that perspective. So it's just amplifying the selection bias that we all already have. And so I guess it gives me a lot of sympathy for people because what they're observing is a subset of what is being put in front of them. And of course, they still have the free will to change their mind about something, or go to a different website today than they went to yesterday, or close the link because this article looks ridiculous. But it's a hard choice to make when we're all prone to that kind of selection bias and just confirmation bias, more specifically. And so the stuff that we see, we're probably just going to keep seeing. It's really hard to break that cycle. And the sort of the observer effect, to me, shows that when you're just subjecting yourself, when you're indoctrinating yourself with this information, it's going to have certain effects on your life. You're going to act a certain way. You're going to behave a certain way. You're going to have a certain kind of outcome in your life because of the things that you're paying attention to, the advertisements that you're seeing, and again, this sort of like indoctrination that you're seeing. It's the programming. Remember they used to call TV programming? It's programming. It's programming us to think a certain way, or to behave a certain way, or to go in a certain direction, or to record the podcast or not record, or to leave or not leave. All of that stuff goes into what makes up our everyday experience. And so I have a lot of sympathy for people that are probably looking at different things than I'm looking at. And therefore they have a different attitude than I have, and they have a different approach than I have. And then it also makes me question, what is it that I'm paying attention to that's causing me to think I'm so right about this issue? I think we all should be having a little bit more sympathy for each other this time of year. Promised I'd bring it around to the special holiday episode.
Cue the music, Sam.
And I think we should all question our own beliefs as well. I think we should also, as much as we think this person is crazy and they believe something that is insane and it's totally counter to what I believe, what I know is right. How do I know that's right? How am I so darn sure? If we think that we're 100% certain and they think they're 100% certain, it would probably be a lot easier to talk and communicate if we both said, I'm only really 80% sure about anything. And if you go in with that attitude, maybe we can find a little bit more common ground.
We'd like to thank you all for listening to Command Control Power, and we'd like to thank, of course, our Patreon subscribers. Keep listening. Lots of good shows coming up in the new year, and thank you to Joe and Sam. Wishing everybody a very happy and safe holiday.
Of customers of all kinds.
Am I on the cloud?
Joe spins his deeply detailed yarns all the time.
I have a whole story about this.
Sam is on the road again, phoning in from a hotel.
At least we know where I am.
Half a century combined of Apple expertise right now. Right now. My Mac is slow.